Welcome to the IVM Podcast Network.
You're listening to the Cricketwala Chronicles with Ayaz Memon.
Hi, this is Pooja from the Fan Garage and you're listening to the Cricketwala Chronicles with Ayaz.
Hi, Pooja.
Hi. As we draw a wrap on Season 1, Ayaz, of course, it's been a super exciting and educative journey for me personally as well. But I think it's only fair that we open out this session for, cricket fans in general, for people who hear you and me and people who know you so well, having sort of heard you over the years.
So you've got questions?
It's called the Triple A. Ask Ayaz anything.
Oh.
And let's hear it in their voice. We've got some questions
Fantastic.
recorded. Yes.
I'm expecting some bouncers, beamers, yorkers.
I hope so too.
And दूसराs.
हाँ, सचिन तेंदुलकर जो है ना बेस्ट क्रिकेटर हैं. तो अभी सुनने में आ रहा है कि विराट कोहली जो है उनको चेस कर सकते हैं. तो क्या ऐसा हो सकता है? उनका क्या व्यू है इस मैटर पर?
There you go, a bouncer coming up. Can Virat chase Sachin Tendulkar?
बेशक हो सकता है. I think, look, records are meant, it's a cliche that records are meant to be broken. When Gavaskar crossed 10,000 runs, 10,122 and made 34 centuries and went past Bradman, and everybody said, my God, that's like the Everest to climb.
Yeah.
And then what happened? Within a couple of years, there was Sachin Tendulkar breaking or looking like breaking all records, which he did.
Yes.
He finished with 100 international centuries.
Yeah.
And now we've got young Virat Kohli hot in chase, of at least the ODI number of centuries. You never know.
You never know, yes.
What he might get. He might actually not reach as many because ODIs might not exist. It could happen. So, I think the measure is not only statistical, it's also, the equity you gather as a batsman or as a bowler or as a player. I think Virat's last 6 months have put him into a position where everybody's talking of him as the next big thing. Much like 20 years or 22 or 25 years back, people were saying Sachin is the next big thing and so on and so forth. So I think he's pretty much on course, but he's still got a long way to go because he's only, I think, 7-8 years through in his career. He's got another 7-8 years at least to go if he keeps his form and fitness.
So ये कहना बिल्कुल जायज होगा कि विराट सचिन का स्कोर चेस कर सकता है.
बिल्कुल कर सकते हैं. बिल्कुल कर सकते हैं.
I would have one question to ask Mr. Ayaz is, can you tell me how much of money laundering takes place during the match?
That's a...
Wide Yorker?
No, Yorker. Look, I really don't know how much takes place. Money laundering, I'm assuming what he means is how much betting takes place.
Yeah, I would think so too. Yeah.
So I think, look, volumes of betting in India are massive. Unfortunately, they're all in the illegal sector.
Right.
So we don't have a clue as to how much it could be. The estimates vary from 100 crore to 1,000 crore to 1,500 crore, depends on who you talk to.
Right.
And therefore, there is, I think, a real indication, or at least, it's actually a very strong signal that betting should be legalized.
Legalized, yes.
And even if it's 100 crore and you tax, say 30%, and I would say you tax it reasonably, 15-20%,
yeah.
and the other part you take through income tax, you will get 15 crore. If the volume of betting is 100 crore, you'll also know what is happening, what is the betting pattern.
Absolutely. What are the quantums being bet?
And if it's 1,000 crore, you're getting 150 crore.
Right.
And I'll tell you why it's important to have legal betting. So what's happened in football, where, also a lot of hanky-panky can go on, or every other sport.
Every sport has betting on it.
So FIFA has got an office or a surveillance cell in Switzerland, which monitors betting sites all over Europe. Mm-hmm. And if they see unusual betting patterns, they alert.
Okay. So it's a red flag, really.
It's a red flag.
Yeah.
It's a red flag. You can call off a match.
Right.
If the betting is, so abnormal.
Right.
And then they monitor the results. It allows you to also see how the game is being played, rather than just, every time there's an upset result, you say match fix ho gaya.
Right.
Paisa kha gaya. Which is not good. Players get demeaned. It's not that players have not indulged in spot fixing and match fixing. We have enough evidence of that.
Sure.
But it's, in my opinion...
Yeah, you can't paint everyone in the same
It's not more than maybe 2 or 3% of the players who may have actually got involved at any stage of time.
Right.
Even in 2000, even in 2013.
Yes.
If there are 200 players in the IPL involved in 2013, it's not that 100 are involved in, maybe 4, 5, 6. So that's 2-3%.
Right.
But everybody's name gets tarnished. So I think it's I don't know really to answer the question, how much is the volume, but I think it will be sizable. And I think that, Indians bet on everything, and anything.
That's true.
So why not legalize it?
Fair point.
Why not a pink ball in T20? That'll color up the match even more.
So, one of the reasons that pink ball test cricket has been introduced, or at least is being tried, is to play in the night.
Right.
And the preliminary tests show that the red ball you can't see.
Sure.
Once it's dark, even under floodlight, it's too, difficult to spot the ball.
Yeah.
And the white ball is already in existence in
ODIs.
and T20 cricket.
Right.
And therefore, to keep a variation going. And also, the white ball shows up better when there's colored clothing.
Right.
And the pink ball shows up better when there's white clothing.
Right.
So that's the reason.
Yeah.
I think there are some issues even in the shade of pink, whether it should be darker, lighter.
Yeah.
But at look, there are always going to be teething problems. When the white ball first came in, everybody was a little aghast. How can you play with a white ball? Cricket ball beyond red color was never imagined.
Correct.
But now nobody even thinks twice.
Yeah.
So I think pink ball will become par for the course.
So it's not an innovation as much as it is a necessity, really.
Yes, it's an innovation in the overall scheme of things that
Yes.
there is another color that has been
yeah.
introduced.
We as Indians, or is India truly a cricket-loving nation? Because if we are, why is it that our women's cricket team struggles so much to get the same attention?
Oh, that's
Someone's all for women.
No. I think that's an interesting question.
Yeah.
So, are we a cricket-loving country? I think fundamental issue is, are we a sports-loving country? So the issue is not just about women's cricket. It's women's hockey. It's women's football. It's women in sport. Barring, say, in tennis you have a Sania Mirza, or in badminton you have a Saina Nehwal, or earlier you had the great girls from Kerala, PT Usha and Anju and all of them coming.
Yeah.
By and large, women in the sporting arena in India have been marginalized or sidelined. We've never seen them as even important enough to be participating in sports. And that's been my biggest grouse.
Right.
That if you aspire to be a sporting nation and if you keep half your population out, you can never become a sporting nation.
Absolutely, yeah.
You can never win enough medals if you keep your women out. In fact, the women are doing better. Whether it's a Mary Kom or a Saina or a Sania.
Right.
So, yes, I think that, are we a cricketing nation? I think we are in the following. Are we a cricketing nation in excellence? To an extent, in the men's section, yes. The women's team has also started doing well. It's doing better in terms of performance as well as rewards for themselves ever since they've come under the BCCI
umbrella. That's right.
So now BCCI is obliged to create a schedule, pay them money, have an international itinerary, send them out for tours. Otherwise, I remember a time, Pooja, when Diana Adalji, Shanta Rangaswamy, Fauzia Khalili and all of those, who were there, women cricketers of 30 years ago, they would go, like we used to go and take donations for school fetes and functions.
Oh my God.
Like that, go to corporate homes and houses and say, can you give us 2,000 rupees, 5,000 rupees? We've got a women's cricket
tour
tournament.
coming up,
We're playing against Australia, or we're having a multi-country tour. Because women's cricket body functioned on its own and had really no support.
Yes.
So that has changed dramatically. Now, does that mean a woman cricketer will earn as much as a Virat Kohli in terms of money earnings? I don't think so. It's not going to happen immediately. It may happen over a period of time. In a team sport, that becomes even more difficult.
Yeah.
In an individual sport, and it's linked to how much viewership there is, frankly.
Absolutely,
So women's tennis now has got equality.
Equal pay,
they are on par. And after a lot of strife and trouble and
vocal protests.
Protests. But women footballers are nowhere near what men's footballers earn.
Yeah.
Or golfers.
That's true.
And so on and so forth. So, in terms of money earning, I don't see it, the parity coming fast, because unless the women's cricket gets audiences, whether at the stadium or television audiences, and therefore then sponsorship follows.
Backing,
and therefore 26%, which is the norm, comes back to the players from the BCCI.
Yeah.
That's because the men's section earns a lot of money.
Sure.
And that's then redistributed amongst them. Right now, women's cricket is being supported, so it needs to be made popular.
Right.
And that's the job of the BCCI as well as the players. I think that's the next step. The first step which has been done is that they've come under the BCCI umbrella, and therefore there's more cricket that they're playing. There's more mention of them in the newspapers.
Yes.
And hopefully it'll grow from there.
Well, let's certainly hope so. The winds of change blow that way too. So here's another interesting question. Do you think T20 will evolve and become shorter than 20 overs, perhaps like 10 overs, just like the Hong Kong sixes, especially to draw in new audiences?
I don't think so. I'll tell you why. It's already very short. So there's been a lot of research, and we discussed this in one of our earlier programs.
Yes, of course, yeah.
That the time taken for a T20 match, or the time allotted for a T20 match, is about 3 hours, 20 minutes.
Right.
Which is pretty much the time spent for an evening out by most people. That's why it's been made into... Why is it not 30 over cricket?
Right.
Or 40 overs?
Yeah.
From 60 we came down to 50. Why not from 50 to 40 or 35 or 30?
Yeah.
Because the research was done, and this is the amount of time after which there's either fatigue, boredom, or not enough time. I want to go back home.
Right.
This is the time. Suppose
It's an ideal window, right?
It's an
Feature
ideal
films
window.
tend to be within the 3-hour window.
Correct.
Yeah.
Your football matches are about 90 minutes. When you take the build up to it, the time...
The break in between, yeah.
and maybe extra time and a penalty shootout will be about 3 hours.
Right.
And likewise other sports. So I think that's the parameters that the ICC has also followed, and said T20 fits into this thing very well. You might play as an exhibition thing, a 10 over match or a sixes match, but Hong Kong sixes is about 6 players.
Yes.
It's not 6 overs.
6 overs, that's right, yeah.
So it could be 6 overs also, but that's more exhibition than a full-fledged tournament. I think you still need a little more depth than just, otherwise why not 1 over? Like you have a Super Bowl, over.
Yeah.
And make that the match.
Well.
So I think you need some little depth also in play. And that's been one of the big criticism, not unjustified, of the traditionalists. That, hey, what is this here? A cricket match which used to take, 450 overs over 5 days, you've reduced it to 20 overs a side, 40 overs.
Yeah.
It's 10% literally of the game.
Right.
That we all knew. So there's been some legitimacy to the complaint, but this format has appealed to people, and I think I would have personally liked 25 overs a team. But, you can always say then 30 overs.
Yeah.
I think the time factor has become very crucial.
Yeah.
It ends in 3 hours, 20 minutes, 3 hours, 15 minutes, things like that.
I think it makes sense there. We'll take a short break there and come right back. Lots more questions on Googlies coming up.
Did you know that some termites in Africa have a pleasantly minty flavor?
Did you know that India's largest music festival was in a way conceptualized in Estonia?
Did you know that the awesomest chips in the world are found only inside US prisons?
Hello, I'm Chuck.
I'm Sriket.
And I'm Naren.
And together we are
Simplified,
a podcast that helps you appear smarter to an audience that knows no different.
Or give you some stuff to talk about at parties.
We are ultra crepidarians.
And if you don't know what that means,
then tune into Simplified with a B on iTunes, Audioboom, or your favorite podcasting app. Episodes out every fortnight.
Hi, this is Pooja and you're listening to the Cricketwala Chronicles with Ayaz. We're here on an Ask Ayaz Anything kind of a session, and we've got lots of questions coming from our fans on Twitter as well. Coming up, the first one, your views on changes in the DRS system, Ayaz.
So fundamental to my argument about DRS is either you have it or you don't. You can't have selective use of DRS. And the ICC is now trying to give umpires, it should be 50% within the ball, should be 50% of the ball should have hit within the stumps, not the external part of the stump. Mm-hmm. Are you getting me? I mean, Now they've had this meeting, technical committee, and the ICC has said it should be 50% of the ball should have hit the interior of the stump, not the exterior.
Right.
So it's still giving a little more advantage to the umpires. But my point is this, if technology is useful as it has been shown to be, there are 2 big factors why I feel that technology should be used. One is that most players seem to want it because they feel it helps them either overcome a wrong decision because you feel
gives
that
them another chance, so to speak.
Not only a chance, you feel it's fairer. If the umpire had to give you out, you might feel, that something has gone wrong with either his judgment or some bias or some prejudice or whatever you might have. That's why neutral umpires came into the first place.
Yeah.
The other part of the story is that you can't have a situation where India is playing Australia and there is no DRS. But if Australia is playing England, there is DRS. In no sport does it happen that you have a selective use of technology or a system.
Right.
You can't have Hawkeye being used for Federer versus Nadal at Wimbledon, but not Djokovic versus Federer.
Right.
It's not possible. It makes a mockery of it.
Absolutely, yeah.
The constraints have been for the BCCI, not the BCCI certainly, but for the ICC, that the technology is expensive and it is not foolproof. So if it's very expensive, if it is going to cost 60 lakhs or 80 lakhs rupees, you know, $100,000 or more, it may be very difficult to employ or deploy when Bangladesh is playing Zimbabwe.
Right.
Because the funds are just not available.
Correct.
Or even for the West Indies. So who digs into
whose pockets?
Whose pockets?
Yeah.
I think the solution there is, how do we have neutral umpires? ICC appoints the neutral umpires, pays them.
Right.
They've got a sponsor who funds that whole umpiring activity.
Correct.
So they need to do that.
Right.
The other is about the technology. That technology has got a 5-7% correction, 8%. And there is the argument which is strong enough that actually when you look at the mistakes made by the umpires, the margin of error is not more than 7-8%.
Right.
So why do we need DRS?
Yeah.
I'm willing to buy that argument if you say we are keeping all technology on hold till they improve and come up to 98-99%. Then we'll use technology.
Yeah.
But then nobody uses technology. You
Right.
can't have part of the sport run by technology and part not.
Right.
Because this sport is also, remember, run very highly through stats. So India, whenever it's playing, has no use of technology or doesn't use technology, and Australia and England do, but the stats as they are computed are the same.
Right.
Batting averages,
Yes.
bowling averages, strike rates are all computed in a common way.
Right.
But the decisions given are different.
Yeah.
You get what I'm saying?
Yes.
So I think there is a lacuna there which needs to be addressed.
Right. Who is the most dangerous batsman in T20?
Currently, it's a tough call. You know, there are on current form. There's Virat Kohli. There's always Chris Gayle, who can hit the ball long distances out of the park. But I would, for a complete all-round batsman, I think my favorite would be, or my most potent player would be AB de Villiers. You know, because he's got everything in him to win a match from virtually every situation. I mean, Virat Kohli had a great season.
Yeah.
But if he has a great 3 more seasons, then
Then we can talk.
If you look at Gayle and de Villiers, they've been actually the best performing, in the maximum number of hundreds are made by Chris Gayle.
Yeah.
But in terms of all aspects of batting, in terms of creative stroke play, running between the wickets, the range that he's got, they call him Mr. 360 now because he plays strokes all over the park.
Yeah.
It should be de Villiers for me.
Good one. An interesting question. Let's see how you get this one. Why doesn't BCCI allow Indian players to play in other T20 leagues? Shouldn't they be allowed to participate in leagues that are mushrooming and getting popular around the world?
So, I mean, this is a vexing question. It's not a question so easily answered. It's not about, human rights. or
brand power.
or work rights, right to work.
Yeah.
It may come to that.
Yeah.
India's producing so many cricketers who all of them may not be absorbed into the IPL.
Yes,
and therefore they will look at avenues to earn money elsewhere. So it's like this. When IPL started, a lot of the boards didn't want their players to be playing the IPL. The English Cricket Board, for instance, was very, very stern.
That's true.
New Zealand was the one board which agreed after much protest, because the New Zealand players said, we'll go on strike.
Yeah.
Or we don't want to play for New Zealand. So they relented.
Right.
So did the Australians. If you look at the earlier IPLs, the bulk of the Aussie players were all those who were retired or about to retire.
Yeah.
Glenn McGrath, Shane Warne, Damien Martin, and so on and so forth.
Yes.
Even Ricky Ponting joined in.
Yeah.
I think there are two aspects to this. One is that if you take any other window, so for instance, if you're playing the Big Bash, it clashes with your domestic season. So if your players migrate and play the Big Bash, then they're not playing domestic cricket in the season, in the home season.
Right.
Or if you're playing during, during the IPL, obviously you're not available for the IPL.
Right.
And if India is the powerhouse of cricket, people are watching Indian players perform because that's where the bulk of the eyeballs are coming from.
Right.
Then you are actually letting go of your control. That's as simply
always
put
the problem.
As always the problem. Though I feel that over a period of time that might be difficult to sustain for the BCCI, as the West Indies found out.
Yes.
People say, I'll go and play. Ban me if you want.
Right.
Suppose the Big Bash, I'm just giving you a theoretical example. Big Bash says we want players so-and-so from India who's not playing in the IPL, is not part of the test team.
Yeah.
I'm willing to pay $2 million.
Right.
The guy might want to go.
Absolutely.
And how can you stop? He'll say, okay, ban me.
Yeah. And that's where also somewhere perhaps the concept of free agents came in?
It could, but it doesn't stop people from banning.
Yeah.
I mean, that kind of a litigation would be very difficult to handle
Yes.
for
sure.
anybody.
Absolutely. Yeah.
But it could get to a situation where they disregard playing for India or in domestic cricket or whatever and say, fine.
Interesting. Here's another one for the cricket connoisseur in you. Is it okay if a player just aims to play in T20 cricket and leagues and not bother about playing Test cricket?
Absolutely okay. Maybe he's not good enough. Unless he's so good.
Well, he won't know if he doesn't get a chance to play or doesn't want to play. He only wants to be a T20 cricketer.
It might come to that. It might come to that. But I think even now, the current generation, if you speak to them, the best players think the pinnacle of cricket is Test cricket. You know, so the biggest challenge for Virat Kohli is not just making runs in the IPL, but making it at the Test level, because that's where the Test is the sternest.
Right.
And for Steve Smith or Kane Williamson, amongst the batsmen, and then there are bowlers. You know, Mitchell Starc. You tell him, you know, he's the best ODI bowler and T20 bowler, but unless he takes 200-300 wickets, he might not be regarded as a great bowler in the history of Australian cricket or world cricket.
Right.
As of now, there might come a time, maybe there has already come a time to that extent, where players aspire for livelihood. I must be just good enough to play T20 for a league, and I'm not available for it. I mean, the Dirk Nannes.
Yeah.
You know, some players come to mind. But they were never good enough to play Test cricket for any length of time. So they settle for the lower option and they are happy. But they have to also perform at some level of excellence there to be part of the circuit or that system or that ecosystem. But if you want to play across all formats, I still think that players are highly desirous of playing Test cricket. Now, I must add a caveat here. We saw indications or contraindications where West Indies was concerned. Chris Gayle, Dwayne Bravo, etc., etc. They moved out, but I think it was more to do with their poor relationship with the
board.
West Indies Cricket Board, rather than their dislike for Test cricket.
Yes.
They still wanted to play at the highest level. They weren't allowed to play, or maybe they ran their own agenda wrongly. I'm not getting into who's to blame.
Yeah.
But they were lost to Test cricket, and West Indies cricket suffered the Test part. I would be very unhappy. But maybe because I'm old-fashioned, the new generation, I don't know how 20 years from now will think. I would be very unhappy if there's no Test cricket.
If there's no Test cricket?
Yeah. And if your best players settle to play only T20. Because I don't see even ODI cricket lasting forever.
Yeah.
So if the sport becomes unidimensional, if there's only T20 cricket, I would be extremely unhappy.
Right. 2 quick questions.
It's like futsal and football.
Yeah.
You know?
Well, let's see how it all plays out. The last delivery in the over. What's the best way to utilize Sachin's talent and experience for the betterment of cricket and the Indian team?
That's a interesting question.
Yes.
And actually, it should be lobbed to Sachin Tendulkar. You know?
Well, let's hear your views for now.
Because there are all kinds of things that he can do.
Yeah.
So he can be the best ambassador for Indian cricket that Indian cricket has ever had.
Yes, which he is
Which
also.
Which he is. I mean, what I'm saying is in an official kind of... So he was the ambassador for the 2015 World Cup. The ICC used him.
Yes.
You're right. He is Indian cricket's ambassador in many ways.
Yes.
But he could become even stronger. I would want him to become the statesman for cricket, for the sport, not just Indian cricket. But particularly about Indian cricket, does he want to be coach? He's already part of the cricket advisory committee.
Yes.
Informally, when he's a mentor.
Yes.
Informally.
Yes.
Not in a formal designated position. He's not the chief coach like Kumble.
Right.
But if somebody meets him or wants a tip or wants to talk to him,
right.
surely Sachin is not going to say, don't talk to me.
Right.
So he's actually shown eagerness to go and talk to younger batsmen, younger players.
Yes.
Rohit Sharma talks about it. But not because he's from Mumbai Indians, but otherwise also. Or, Ajinkya Rahane, who plays for, or Virat Kohli, who's, says that I go up to him whenever. So, whether he wants I think the crux of this question is whether he wants an official designated post. Does he want to be BCCI president or secretary? I don't think so. I think he would be rather involved with the sport itself, how it's played.
I would think so, yeah.
How it will grow, how it will evolve, what can be done to improve Indian cricket or world cricket. Those are roles that he would want to play. And he'll probably straddle both the BCCI and the ICCI, whether formally or informally.
Right.
But more in advisory and a statesman's kind of position rather than getting down to becoming a coach or something, at least in the near future.
Yeah.
I don't see that happening.
So cricket statesman is how you think he should be.
I think he should be, yes.
Well, which is great. And I think that's about enough we have time for, Ayaz, as many questions as they
Wonderful,
are to ask
yes.
you. But here it is. Thank you for a phenomenal season
Pooja, it's
and
been
sharing
fantastic.
your chronicles with us.
Yes, and I think I wouldn't have, you've been there hurling all these deliveries at me, and I had no choice but to play each ball on its merit.
Yes,
And
absolutely.
then every stint that we've had, take fresh guard.
Absolutely. Thank you so much.
So
And,
till we meet next season.
Next season. Signing off from the Cricketwala Chronicles, Pooja from the Fan Garage. Thanks, Ayaz.
Bye-bye.
Cricketwala Chronicles is available on iTunes, Audioboom, YouTube, the IVM Podcast app, and many other podcasting apps that you may like.
Hey man, just help me out, man. I need some podcast, man. I haven't had a fix in a week. Just need some.
Don't you worry about it. I got podcast galore for you, man. Just go to ivmpodcast.com. You can also find us on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram.
Thanks, man. I'm gonna check it out.